Welcome back to Can I Be Honest? We have another sobering show tonight with the Breonna Taylor case evolving and the grand jury's decision. So it's a heavy moment. The protests are continuing, amping up, and there's just a lot to talk about. There's a lot to consider as we think about human life, as you think about someone who's no longer here because the people that were paid to protect and serve her ended up doing the opposite. So yeah, we're going to talk about that. I'm really excited to have the attorney Cecil Roberson on with us tonight. He was a former prosecuting attorney. I think he's going to provide a lot of insight. One of the things I appreciate about being able to hear from somebody who's kind of seen the inside of some of this stuff. So he works in Michigan. It's a different scenario here, but there's so many crossovers, and so that's part of what, when I look at stuff like this, I'm trying to figure out what are the pieces that I don't see and that I don't kind of pick up on just from my normal kind of civilian, uninformed ways, like being unfamiliar with somehow the legal system works. So I'm really keen to hear the insight that he's going to bring to the table. I do want to make sure we show respect to this whole, across the board here, to Breonna's family, who isn't getting their baby girl back. Just that's it. She goes to sleep one night. Good night, Mom. You know, whatever kind of conversation she has with her family during that day, and in the middle of the night, that's it. It's over. Police raid gone wrong. Shouldn't have gone in the first place. DeJuan, how are you feeling?
Yeah, I'm feeling heavy. It's definitely heavy. I am concerned that we are, as a nation, are going to start to do what Black people have learned to do and just grow accustomed to these things. Hope kind of does this for me, right? Like, it's like there's times when I'm here, there's times when I'm here. And, I would say, I'm definitely concerned that we will do that thing where we're like, you know what? We've just gotten used to it. Like seeing the response to Ahmaud Arbery, George Floyd, and Breonna Taylor, and the unified voices crying out, the diverse voices crying out for justice and freedom, and specifically justice together, started to take my hope here. With this decision, and the climate that I feel and I see, I'm watching happen in response to some of the protests, and some of the things that are being said about the protesters, how they're painting protesters and labeling everyone under a same, like a banner, like a couple people doing some stuff that's taking it too far in some opinions, and I'm just concerned with where we're going and where we'll end up. So we're going to talk about this, and you'll hear us share more of our thoughts. We hope that you guys share some of yours, and obviously we have no shortage of things to discuss, and Ralph's going to tell you why.
This is America.
I have a dream.
These are animals.
America preaches integration and practices segregation.
Why did you say Mexico?
A rising tide of discontent.
The South will rise again. I have a dream.
We have contrasting visions about what America is.
This is America.
So we are interested in connecting and hearing your thoughts in the comments. We also posted links there so that you can jump on with us and Cecil. And why don't we bring him on now so we can intro him? He can introduce himself, and then we'll get a little bit about his initial feedback. Then we'll have a short video. But we do want to get you guys engaged as well. So if there's particular questions that you have for him, from a professional standpoint, professional point of view, I want you to be thinking of those and drop those in the comments, and we'll make sure we get them on here. So can we bring Cecil on? Welcome, sir. How are you?
Hey, good evening, everyone. I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Welcome to the Can I Be Honest show. We're glad to have you on. Thanks for joining us.
So what's your initial take on this? I know we kind of shared a couple thoughts on the sobering nature of this, and you've seen a lot, and you've seen it from the inside, and so I imagine your view of this, there's it's informed a little bit differently than mine or Dewan's or other people might be. What's kind of your initial hot take on it, and then we'll dive deeper into that later.
I think my initial take is probably what everybody's thinking, that something grave has occurred here. There were multiple failures where this should not have occurred. Unfortunately, it did occur. I hope that the state, the county, the city, the police department, the AG, the judges, everyone from top to bottom, take a look at these type of warrants. Take a deep breath before you sign that warrant. They have, and as you can see in this case, dire consequences when you do not take these types of warrants seriously. A person has a right to life, liberty, and property. The courts has consistently stated that there is no more valuable property in America than your home, and you have a right to defend your home. You have a right to protect your home and the people inside. And so there were multiple failures where this shouldn't have occurred. That's my hot take.
Yeah. Appreciate that. Can you give us a little bit of background on yourself, just for the context of the viewers and just where you're coming from a professional standpoint?
So currently I'm an attorney. I'm out on my own. Roberson Law is my law practice. When I first started as an attorney, I actually worked as a volunteer assistant prosecuting attorney for Kim Worthy in Wayne County Prosecutor's Office. That's where I got my start. And then I went to Kent County, which is in Grand Rapids area, and I was an assistant prosecuting attorney there under Chris Becker. And I was also a assistant prosecuting attorney in Oakland County and for Jessica Cooper. And so I have a really pretty good experience. I was in the courts every day dealing with these type of matters. You'd see warrants, you see these arguments of illegal search and seizures, tainted fruit, things of that nature. So when I look at cases like this, I try to dissect them to kind of put myself in the shoes of the individual assistant attorney general or the prosecuting attorney or attorney general in these cases. And so now after that, I went into civil practice, worked with a firm called Siegel McCambridge, and I did that for a while before I just decided that it was time for me to step out. I can do more meaningful impact in my community if I'm out here on my own and assisting with the cases that I believe deserve to be assisted.
Yeah. So Dewan, what do you want to do? You want to jump into the video? You have some questions you want to ask first?
I have some questions, but I want to share the video with everybody. So, I mean, if you're just jumping on, thank you for joining us. We're talking Breonna Taylor, the decision of the grand jury, and we have Cecil Roberson on here to share some of his perspective from a legal professional. We didn't want to just get out here and spitball it and talk all emotion. We can't avoid having emotion when it comes to subjects like this, but we definitely want to have somebody that can help us try to wrap our mind around how the hell we keep on like having these situations where like a grand jury can come and so consistently not hold anybody accountable for these type of tragedies. So I do want to see if Ralph can go ahead and cue the video that talks a little bit about what's happening on the ground in the aftermath, and get some of the feelings from Louisville as well as around the country. So Ralph, go ahead and share that with us right quick.
Protests following the grand jury decision in the Breonna Taylor shooting. People taking to the streets after Taylor's family spoke out, demanding the grand jury. Trevor is in Louisville with the latest. Good morning to you, Trevor.
The activists here in Louisville say they want to make this city as uncomfortable as possible. They're going to keep protesting until they get justice for Breonna Taylor, and they have the support of thousands of demonstrators all across America who continue to protest and take to the streets. Overnight, Louisville under curfew. Demonstrators on the streets for the third night, protesting the grand jury decision not to charge the officers in Breonna Taylor's death. Police making arrests, the protests stretching coast to coast.
We want justice for Breonna!
From New York City, where demonstrators marched on the Brooklyn Bridge, hundreds taking part in a sit-down protest.
Oh my God.
To California, where in Oakland, crowds of protesters throwing bottles and cans clashed with police. And in Sacramento, protesters there also demanding justice. Violence in Albuquerque, New Mexico, too. This car driving through an intersection that was blocked by protesters. Breonna's mother taking to Twitter overnight saying, "I hope you never know the pain of your child being murdered 194 days in a row." In Louisville on Friday, Breonna's family speaking out with their first public comments since that grand jury decision.
The system as a whole has failed her.
Her mother, Tamika Palmer, too emotional to speak. Instead, Breonna's Aunt Bianca reading a statement wearing Breonna's EMT jacket.
I was reassured Wednesday of why I have no faith in the legal system, in the police, in the law that are not made to protect us Black and brown people.
Flanked by activists, attorneys, and the father of Jacob Blake, the man shot in the back by police in Kenosha, Wisconsin.
We ain't going nowhere. We will not be moved.
The family demanding the release of the grand jury transcript, launching a blistering critique of Kentucky Attorney General Daniel Cameron.
How insulting was it on the indictment that Kentucky Attorney General Daniel Cameron didn't mention her name one time?
You are a coward. You are a sellout. And you were used by the system.
Breonna Taylor's autopsy confirms she died of multiple gunshot wounds in that police raid of her apartment back in March. The grand jury ruling the shooting was justified because Taylor's boyfriend had fired first. This body camera footage posted to social media by Sergeant John Mattingly's lawyer shows the officer getting help outside Taylor's apartment after he was shot. Kentucky Representative Attica Scott, the state's only Black female legislator, has now proposed Breonna's law, which would ban no-knock warrants. This week, Scott and her daughter among the more than 100 people arrested while protesting in downtown Louisville.
Well, I say to all of the officers, what are you doing? Stop it. You're making enemies out of the people who pay you to protect and serve them.
And Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear is also urging the release of the grand jury transcripts. He wants the people to have all the facts, but the state attorney general Daniel Cameron says he's not going to release them or any of the evidence, at least right now, because of a pending trial and an ongoing FBI investigation. Janae?
Yeah, so there you have it. That's some of the reportings. I guess the first question I have for Cecil is like, what are your thoughts about like the attorney general and just the job that it's like he probably has a no-win situation on his hands personally, but you know, as a Black man that's worked on the prosecuting side, what are your thoughts on just like the job that he had and what he did with, I don't know how familiar you are with the facts on the case, but what are your thoughts about the position he is and how he's being received and some of the comments that we've heard some of the activists make about him?
Yeah, my initial thoughts about the job as an attorney general or prosecuting attorney, it's a delicate balance. You're balancing your duties first and foremost to the Constitution, as well as you're also trying to balance that relationship you have with police officers, detectives, chiefs, things of that nature. In Detroit, the city of Detroit, you can always see that sometimes the relationship between the police chief and the prosecuting attorney, sometimes they spout things in the media. So it's a very delicate balance, as well as you're performing your duties for the county, at least in Michigan, the county, for the people. But I would always tell defense attorneys when they would come into the courtrooms I practice that I swore to the Constitution. I worked for this prosecuting attorney. And I think that although it's a tough job, it's a job that the individual prosecuting attorney, attorney general has signed up for, and you're paid to make those tough calls and tough decisions because you want to get this thing right. This is a situation where a person has lost their life in their home, and you can't just lean on, well, their other person fired first. There's a lot of things that should have been triggered to keep an individual from entering a person's home at midnight. And the most important thing when you're a prosecuting attorney is, at least in Michigan, what happens is, I'll kind of give you how it works. An officer comes to the prosecuting office and they present their facts, their evidence. They usually present a police report. They may present video, and all this information they give to an assistant prosecuting attorney or chief, depending on the severity of the case. Sometimes the actual prosecuting attorney will be reviewing the information. In this case, the actual prosecuting attorney, the actual attorney general will probably be reviewing this information. They would bring in their chief. They'd probably bring in their best assistant prosecuting attorney. They would have a lot of things to turn over to see, one, was a crime committed, and if so, who committed that crime? And so they absolutely have a duty to do the things right the first time. Now, in the state of Michigan, at least at the state level, the prosecuting attorney presents the cases to the chief or their assistant prosecuting attorney, and they make the decision. At the federal level in Michigan, the grand jury is presented this facts, the law, and then they make the decision to make a charge.
So I guess the next question I have with what you, I guess you being familiar with the process and all that, do you think that they made the right call in, not bringing charges against anybody? I mean, obviously they brought the charges against, as I've heard it put, the bullets that missed her and went into someone else's room, right? I think they have charges for that. Ironically. But so do you think that the right decision in the call was made not to bring any charges against anybody else?
And when the tough part about this is, from my understanding of what happened in Kentucky, the attorney general in this case presented the information to a grand jury, and the grand jury decided that there was not enough information presented to show at a probable cause nature or level that a crime has been committed. And unfortunately, there hasn't been any information as of yet of what was presented to this grand jury. What information was given? What type of an investigation was done? We don't have a transcript. We don't have the information that we can actually say there wasn't enough done at this point in time, because we're still waiting for, hopefully, information to show what was presented to this grand jury, where they only made the decision to charge one officer with wanton endangerment. And so I'm hopeful that eventually that information comes out. I know that the federal government is looking into this as well. Hopefully they will do a thorough investigation, because there is a collapse in the system if this occurs. And most importantly, what I looked at in this case is, even if the officers were correct, even if the individual they were looking for was in this home, why was this executed at midnight? Why was there not a TAC team who specialized in de-escalating this type of situation involved? There was no SWAT team involved. Why was a detective and two narcotics investigators doing a warrant knock or no knock warrant at midnight? We've all seen the movies or TV shows, SWAT goes in, throws flashbangs to disorient the person. They practice and train to not shoot individuals who do not pose a threat. You see these officers go in and just start shooting because one round was fired or multiple rounds was fired in their direction. And there's a lot of breakdowns here that should not occur.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because if you think about what happens, if if you're asleep and if you're in bed, and if you have a firearm, if you're we are a pro firearm country in the U.S. of A. But and I think that's one of the things for people that carry, or the people, even if they don't carry, people that have stuff at home. You think about what it would mean for all of a sudden, bang, 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 somebody's like banging on your door, then your door gets kicked in, and what are you doing? One, how well oriented are you with what's happening right now? At midnight, and then what are you going to do? You're going to fire, because it's you or them. Somebody's coming in your door, and it's crazy. They had a primary place for her, for the guy that they were looking for, where they knew he was at. The place, this was kind of a secondary place that they wanted to search, which, to your point, they could do it anytime, because this is her former boyfriend, and they, at some point in the past, he had packages delivered to that address. And so the fact that they get to where they get to is just absolutely ridiculous. We'd love to see you guys in the comments. If you want to jump on, if you have a comment, we'd love to see like how you're feeling right now about the grand jury decision. You surprised? You like this is what you kind of figured would happen? Where are you at with that? If you have questions directly for the attorney here, feel free to put those down as well. He's got a wealth of experience, from an insider's perspective on this kind of stuff. So you, as far as people getting charged, you talked about that. Talk about everything. Can you talk about, from what should have gone on in this case leading up to this, and then people want somebody to blame here. I think that's a key part of it. So like, if we don't land here, what would justice look like in this scenario from your perspective, given all that you know?
So the reason why I say it's a multitude of failures is because, from my understanding, working with officers, the lead detective in this situation who's recommending this knock or no knock warrant to go into the building must talk to his sergeant. It has to go up the chain. Okay. And then somebody has to say, okay, take this. It's good enough to go to a judge. And then a judge has to review it and say, you're right, I see it, and sign off on it. And in that document, the facts that should be presented is, because they're looking for somebody else. And I just don't see enough information presented that says this person it says that he is alleged of doing drug activities. But to obtain a warrant of this type of nature, you have to show one of two things. One being that this individual is an immediate danger to the community, or that the evidence they're seeking can be destroyed. Now, they'll say, well, it's narcotics, it's drugs, he can flush, he can destroy the evidence that we're looking for. But I always ask people, if you look at your place that you live, let's say, for instance, Detroit. If you're telling me, and I'm a judge, and I say, hey, what you're asking for is to do this in the city of Detroit. But if you're as a judge saying, I wouldn't allow it in wealthier neighborhoods, Dearborn or Livonia, in the same county, then there's something wrong in this warrant request. If I'm in Oakland County, I say, yeah, I'll allow it in Southfield, but I wouldn't allow it in Birmingham, and there's something wrong with this request. I look at it as these individuals requested a warrant, and a judge signed off on a warrant that potentially he would not have signed off on if it was next door to him. And so that, to me, is when I say there's a multitude of failures. If the boxes aren't checked in one city, it's not checked in all cities.
Is there someone to prosecute? Is kind of my question. Do you feel like you can hold somebody on the somebody should go to jail for this?
Yeah. I definitely would be curious to see, why the officers, because this is a reckless disregard for life. You're going through a door at night, 3 officers. I don't know what role each one played, but you're going into a highly volatile situation, and your job is to be tactful. to de-escalate. An officer is not supposed to escalate a situation. They're supposed to de-escalate. And so why do 3 officers feel that it was completely necessary to go on this property at midnight and then go in with the, there's contradicting information, whether they knocked or did not knock, they're believing that this was house or it was the wrong house or the suspect was in, even if everything was correct, even if that person, these are allegations, okay, you're convicted by a trier of fact, a judge or a jury. This is an allegation he commits a crime of narcotics. What did you see as 3 officers or whoever decided to take that warrant and say, we need to come into this building immediately, right now at midnight, because there is an extreme danger or risk of narcotics being destroyed? Now, if this individual wasn't a bitch drug dealer, I mean, if he's an alleged narcotics dealer, you're telling me this is the only time that he can go in? So I would look at the 3 officers in terms of what was the information they present. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of information coming from here that gives us that. I mean, we know the officers shot recklessly into the apartment. Breonna's in the hallway. We are getting such a hodgepodge of information that it's really tough to say who's the actual culprit in this situation. And I'm not sure if that's because someone is not trying to be truthful or if this is somebody who's not good at their job. I'm making an assumption because I'm just like you guys. I'm just hearing information from the media outlets and trying to piece this thing together. And there's just a lot of stuff that's missing. And it says, why was it important that they had to go into this house at midnight? Only the 3, no SWAT, no flashbang, no distraction tools. Come in an apartment, you hear gunshots, you lay out rounds in the hallway. There's no indication that she had a weapon on her. So why is she? I'm assuming in officer training, you're taught how to shoot a person with a gun and not shoot a person with a gun. For all I know, she's running to be protected. And so I would definitely look at and need more information and facts because there's a lot of things that's missing.
Yeah. Well, the officer they charged originally, and I know you had something, Dewan, but I do want to say that the officer that was charged because he shot through the window. The blinds were down, so he has 0 line of sight, and that automatically is a no-go right there. Like, that's a violation of protocol. And so even with that, I'm curious as to, and to your point, and I know they're asking for the grand jury things, and I don't know how long it's going to take. It's interesting to see, like, how timelines have shortened. Like, even in Detroit, we had if you remember, 3-4 weeks ago, we had a young man that was killed by the police, and in less than 24 hours, they released the body cam footage on that. It was amazing, like, because that stuff takes. I mean, it takes a long time for that stuff to get released. So it's been interesting how much this pressure by protesters and others has kind of pushed up timelines on stuff like that. But yeah, that was the thing that was a little like, if you can, I don't know, police have this different type of immunity than your average person, because if you violate protocol and now it costs somebody's life, to me, there's a thought there. It's like, dude, this wasn't just like, you didn't violate protocol and now we lost $10,000. You know what I'm saying? I mean, you didn't violate protocol and now, like, we're getting sued. Like, this is like somebody lost their life. Yeah. She's not coming back. Yeah. So where is these are the questions where I think a lot of people would look at, like, man, where is the justice in that?
Yeah, and it's rough, right? It's like it's just rough for all of us. Right. It's like, I don't even want to downplay the challenges that it is to be a police officer in that situation. Right. It's like, as Cecil comes on, I think about him and, like, what that looks like. I'm not even sure. We should have asked you, where'd you grow up at, Cecil? But, like, because I know that in my family, if I came home and said I was a prosecutor, I know that how I would be received by some family members, you know what I'm saying? But I mean, I just think about, like, the police officers in the situation, right? It's like, one, like, if I'm in a community and there's, like, some folks selling drugs and I got some crazy activity and my children are there, like, I want somebody to do something about it, right? Like, I don't want my children to be Like I don't want to live around that. I don't want my family raised around that. I want somebody to do something about it, right? And then like if we're expecting police officers to walk into like a raid situation and de-escalate, like, you know, I've seen like, you know, a number of raids happen like up close, not being in the home or a suspect or anything like that, but on the street that I just so happen to be on, seeing raids like happen. And it's like there's not a lot of people trying to de-escalate situations. What they're trying to do is display we have a stronger force than you do, so that the people will, like, you know, submit to their authority, if you will. And I don't know if I would do anything differently in that situation if I'm an officer. You know what I mean? It's like I just don't I don't know, you know. So I don't want to like downplay the crazy situation that they find themselves in, but just like anybody else, like you said it earlier about the DA, right? Like you signed up for this ultimately. You know what I mean? So if things go crazy and they go foul, and somebody, an innocent person, loses their life, like the expectation of the community is that something is wrong here. If we don't have a law in place that says we can't go and kill somebody that's in their home, like that's a problem. Somebody fails. Something is failing. Somebody needs to pay for this. And to your point earlier, like there's a reason that they won't practice these type of raids in different communities, right? Like it's not people of color. You know what I mean? It's like people with means and resources that are more likely to be in those spaces, even if you are a person of color, right? Which means we're not going to be satisfied with somebody getting off for killing an innocent person. So what we do is we avoid that from happening from giddy up by not practicing these type of raids or whatever the practice is in those communities, right? So like there are protections in place, it seems like, for everybody except for the vulnerable, which oftentimes are poor people and poor people of color specifically. And that's where we find ourselves continuing to have like a litany of things to talk about week in and week out, because, you know, we just have not found a way to value Black lives the way that we value other lives. And it's rough. It's like we're having a conversation about all the like facts and all this stuff. And at the end of the day, like what Steve would always point us back to is Breonna Taylor's, her family is dealing with the loss of a loved one, right? So like we're talking about facts, we're talking about justice and all this, and her mama just want like her baby. You know what I'm saying? And we know that we'll be talking about this in 3 weeks from now. We know 6 months from now we'll have talked about this 4 more people. You know what I mean? And it's just like, to me, it's like there's like social pressure normally works to a degree. And I'm not even seeing a social pressure like cause people to pump their brakes and say, hold on, like let's not put ourselves in a situation where we'll bring that type of attention to our community, right? It's like we're still seeing like tragedy after tragedy, death after death, and we're hearing people call for death. We're hearing people call and like talk about, I'm seeing like friends of mine on social media, like, and that are happy that you have like vigilantes going out there armed, looking to kill people that they say are looting. And if they are looting, like the way that we value, the way we devalue lives, it's crazy. It's crazy to me. And I think that we all do it to a degree. And we have to figure out how to find ourselves like in a better place, because, you know, I don't know how long we can expect people to continue to peacefully protest if we're going to keep coming back with these type of verdicts. I just don't know, you know. So those are some of my thoughts. Thank you for letting me go on that rant. Steve, I am interested to hear just kind of like where you are with this. I mean, we got the legal side, we have, you know, or we don't really have the legal side, because to Cecil's point, like we don't have many facts, right? But I think that if we talk about like the Black community, we're not surprised, right? Like we don't get surprised. We would be surprised if somebody was brought to justice. And I just I really appreciate like the consistency that we have in Detroit, because you know, you can like or not like the prosecutor here, Kim Worthy, but she's consistent, and she will like come after like whoever you are if it appears that you've like broke the law, you know. And I think that that has a lot to do with why we don't see as much, right? I think that like we have like we I don't have my finger on the pulse of what the experience of the young Black man is in Detroit as closely as I did when I was a young Black man. My interactions with the police were unhealthy, right? I'm a you know, older Black male with gray hair in my beard, so my interactions look a lot differently. But I think that when you're talking about just straight up killings and police brutality that's caught on tape, I think that there's like you'll see that those type of situations be prosecuted here.
Yeah, and I think so. I do have a question. I think my questions for Cecil kind of go more into the systematic stuff, and I think part of it is because of this. I think you can look at this case and say, all of us have this way of trying to stay exactly where we are. You know what I'm saying? Like everything that we take in life, in the world, we try to make it fit our current worldview. And so then like certain things we'll dismiss, or certain things we'll call an anomaly, or whatever the case may be. But we try, even the way everything all the information that we filter, and then, you know, our social media helps us too, because it sees what we already like, and then it feeds us more of that stuff, which just reinforces, you know, our same viewpoint. And then all of our friends think like us, and if you don't, or if you say something dumb, I'm going to unfriend you. So now I'm like more inclined to group think. And so I think with a Breonna Taylor, you kind of look at it like, you know, you said it, Cecil, like this is a series of like people that just like failed, like failures on so many levels, like. And so that almost implies like, oh, if the system is followed the right way, then things will be okay. So I have a question about that. I don't think that that's 100% what you're saying, but so that's kind of like.
While you're queuing up your question, I'm sorry for cutting you off. It looks like we had a couple people that jumped in that wanted to share their thoughts. If you clicked on one of the links and want to jump back on, and we'll have Ralph bring you in a lot faster. So it looks like somebody was.
Oh, I didn't know anybody was on.
Yeah, somebody was on and they jumped off. So if you are watching and you want to share your thoughts or comments, please jump back on. We'll have Ralph bring you right on with us.
Yeah, just bring them in next time, and we'll wrap up whatever we're saying and get their thoughts. So you can just bring them right on when whoever's talking. All that to say is this: I think at the end of the day, we need to really start. This is why I always go back to trying to personalize this. Like I have four children, you know, sister, brothers, you know, mom, dad. It's like being able to picture Breonna as one of my children, one of my siblings, one of like a cousin, somebody that I love and value, and think about the fact that like whoever I just talked to on the phone, like that's it. You know what I'm saying? Like you don't get another chance. There isn't another like Christmas. There isn't another birthday. The little thing that she used to do for you that only she did, that only she knew, that certain look, the like when she was doing something she wasn't supposed to do, but she had that look that like you tried not to laugh, but you couldn't even help it. Like you wanted to be mad and upset. Like those little things about the people in our lives is like, this is one of those people for several somebodies. And so if we can get to the point where we're valuing human life and like seeking to be empathetic and put ourselves in those shoes, then I think would be, because some of the biggest champions for change are the people that have been directly impacted. You think about like the what an impact that Mothers Against Drunk Driving has had. Like these are mothers that have stepped up and said like, we are like gonna go like to the umpteenth level to make sure that like all this stuff, there's enough attention and pressure on drunk driving to like curb it. You know what I'm saying? And so like when you look at like what's been set up legally as it relates to that, some of the things around that are more stringent than other stuff that you would say is like equally bad or worse. And so it's like, what are the things systematically that you think really need to be addressed here? Because I think part of it is people following what they're supposed to do, which is, I think, of what you were implicating earlier. I think another piece is like, I don't think enough of us are really thinking like, what would this look like if we had to do a clean slate? What would a clean slate look like? You know what I'm saying? If you could build it from the ground up. And I think that's part of what we need to be talking about. I don't use the words like some people do, let's just blow it all up and start over. I think, once you blow it up, like it's blown up and we're going to keep blowing each other up. But I think, though, if we're going to rebuild this from the ground up, I'm curious about what your thoughts are. What are the significant things that you would say, this needs to change, this needs to change,
Yeah. I think we have a lot of tools in our tool chest at this time to affect change. We have an election upon us. Don't just be a voter, be an informed voter. The judge who signed off on the warrant in Jefferson County ran unopposed. She's up for re-election in 2023. If you don't like the fact that she's signing off on no-knock and knock warrants without asking for more facts or ordering certain things to occur, you can vote in 2023 in that county. There is the sheriff, the mayor, the prosecuting attorney. These are positions that you want to dive into their background. You want to know where their heart lies. The Constitution is very clear. It says life, liberty, and property. There is no asterisk by life. It is most important. Officers, I have officers that are friends, they have a very tough job. It is an extremely tough position to be in. They're in a profession where they don't have the luxury of doing the wrong thing, making a mistake. Like airplane pilots. I think Chris Rock made a joke that says, you can't say some of my pilots like to land. Every officer has to do everything correctly. I think it's very important that the prosecuting attorney, the attorney general, police officers, the police force are very transparent. Make the people aware of what's been done so that we can make a decision as a people how to move forward, whether that's an election, whether that's in support or no support. And I grew up, to kind of give you a background, I grew up on the west side of Detroit, Cass Tech alum area. And so it was a tough discussion with people when I told them I was assistant prosecuting attorney. And I would explain it the way my chief in Kent County made the first statement. One of the attorneys, assistant prosecuting attorneys, said to me when I was there, this was the culture that was there. We did our warrants ourselves in Kent County. We were doing it on certain days, every week, every other week. The most important thing that I took with them, from them, I should say, was he told me that you are the first defense attorney. Do not take them for their word. If you want more information, don't sign the warrant, ask for more information. And I hope that other assistant prosecuting attorneys who are signing off on these warrants and judges who are signing off on the no knock and knock warrant are asking these tough questions. Give me more information. There isn't a asterisk by life that says, if you are suspected of narcotics, I have a right to go into your home and then shoot at random or at will. Even if I am being charged with a crime, have a right to due process. If you take my life on the scene, you're not giving me my due process. And so I think that systematically, pay attention to your ballots this upcoming election. Make sure you check their websites, see the platforms, find out what education they have. The most important people on your ballot is not going to be the president. It's going to be your prosecutor attorney, your judges, your city council, those people have an impact on your neighborhood or your block. And you should make sure that you understand what they are believing in. And if they're after their term, they haven't fulfilled what they said they were to better your community, find somebody else.
Yeah, that's interesting because I never pay attention to those people, honestly. And you know, I don't, and because I haven't thought about like the direct impact as much. And part of the thing about politics, you know, we get the president, the role of the president kind of flushed, you know, shoved down our throats so much. Everybody knows, you know, who they're going to vote for president. Most people don't know who's running for any of the other positions right now, and an election is a month away. So, you know, that's what's interesting about that.
Yeah, I was sitting here it's as I think about, you know, Cecil talking about growing up on the west side of Detroit and all of these positions. One of the things that I wrestle with, and I you know, try to look for some of the nuances as we have these discussions, and how important it is. Like when you said that, you know, you were told that you were the first defense attorney, right?
Yeah.
I think if we desire and expect to get a fair shake, it is very important that we have the Cecils in some of those seats, right? That, you know, are going to look at it objectively and fairly and say, you know, I'm not getting ready to give somebody a strike against their character because they fit a profile, right? Because you fit that same profile, or you did once upon a time. So you know that doesn't make someone guilty. So I think that, you know, we have to figure out in the Black community how to not prematurely label somebody a sellout, but encourage folks to take on some of those roles and find themselves in some of those seats. We need like Black officers, like some of the officers that I work closely with. I do a lot of work in the 10th precinct, and I see some of those officers interact in a fair and just way, and I don't see a lot of their interactions by far. I see a very small percentage of them, but I see many of them like conduct themselves in a fair way when they're interacting with people in the community, even if, you know, it's, you know, them getting ready to make an arrest or them getting ready to pull somebody over. And I think having representation in those spaces, in those seats, will make us more likely. You know, it's not going to cure all, and you will have sellouts. You know what I mean? But for the most part, I think that we need to find folks that do represent us, do care about us, and encourage them to take some of those positions, because I think that is a way to properly like bring balance to some of the scales that are slanted against us.
100%.
Yeah. So it looks like we got some activity going on in the comment section. Again, if you want to jump on, participate in this conversation in real time, you got about 11 minutes, 30 seconds. So feel free to click on the link and you can jump in, and Ralph will get you queued right up. Looks like we had a CJ on earlier. If you're still out there, CJ, feel free to jump back on. And then somebody else was on earlier and they dipped out. They think that's our bad. We took too long to get you on. But yeah, Wafa, I agree. Like, it's sad and nothing new. And I hope, again, my hope not being here right now, my hope kind of being, you know, somewhere, you know, here. But, you know, Wafa also said this will make us more resilient, not defeated. And I pray that you're right. And I think Atia, if I'm pronouncing it right, Law said, how come we value property more than human life in America? Yeah, I wish I knew, right? That definitely seems to be the case. I've asked that question many times. I don't know if either you guys have thoughts on that, because I do see that kind of being a consistent space that we find ourselves in. When I hear people, like, not that I want people to stop calling out like looters and folks that are doing property damage, but if sometimes I feel like the people that cry out against looting and property damage, which I don't think that we should stop doing that, because I think that that hurts the peaceful protest. But I don't ever seem to hear the people that call out for against looters and folks that are doing property damage. I never seem to hear them crying out for justice or against police brutality. It seems like I only hear many of those voices. I say 80 to 90% of those voices. I only hear 80 to 90% of those voices when it comes to property damage, you know, to Atiya's point, if I'm pronouncing it right. If not, please forgive me. But that's something that, you know, concerns me. So Stephen Marshall had a question. Ralph, what was that? If you can change the officer for shooting,
charge him.
I'm sorry, indiscriminately, then why isn't someone charged for actually shooting and killing someone? Well, we're gonna throw that to Cecil.
Yeah, so it sounds like the officer
that's my biggest concern when.
No, I was just gonna say the officer that shot through the window, and that was the problem. Like, he didn't have a line of sight. So I think going back to that, I'm curious what your thoughts are. I think he's kind of tying in off of that.
My thought is, when you're a prosecutor, you learn two things. There's one thing that's called a question of law, and then there's another part of my job, which is called question of fact, or the legal system. So you have a question of law and a question of fact. When discussing, did they do the right thing? Is this a gross negligence of duty? That's a question of fact that should be presented to a jury. It's something where you should charge it and say, let the trier of fact make this decision if the facts show that they are guilty or not guilty. And the tough part about this case, we have very little information, was what was presented to the grand jury in Kentucky. And if information wasn't fully provided, you're going to get no probable cause. Probable cause is a low standard. It's not beyond a reasonable doubt. It's just that a crime probably committed, and this person over here probably committed the crime. And so if you can see that there was some recklessness, some wanton behavior, some reckless disregard for life, yeah, then you probably could charge them with gross manslaughter or charge them second degree and let the jury decide. To not even allow the full, because at a probable cause hearing, every witness is not presented. You only present enough witnesses as a prosecutor to show probable cause. I'm not performing a full trial at that stage. There's way more information that I must present to show beyond a reasonable doubt. And so, yes, I totally agree. Hopefully, like I said, the federal government is still looking into it. Maybe they will be able to get more information out. Maybe they will be transparent about the information. I do find it very odd that the attorney general would go campaign for a president while he has this big case. And, you know, I'm not going to get into the politics of it, but I will say it is very interesting that you have this case on your desk and you will go platform for someone else who's running for president. Because your job is to separate politics. What are the facts? What are the law? Do I have probable cause? And if so, charge.
Yeah. I think the case at this point, I think the case against charging the officers, you know, what the opposition is looking at is the fact that it was her boyfriend that fired the shots first, and so that's the argument against, and so that's something to consider. Again, you know, I know it gets way more complicated than that, and then and that's just the tip of the iceberg too. I mean, this is kind of very surface level, getting into what the grand jury actually said. I think what you just pick up where you just left off though. Talk about that a little more, the campaigning, because this is something that I actually wasn't familiar with. So he's campaigning for, is it the current president? Is that my assumption correct? Is that what you're saying?
If I'm not mistaken, I believe he was at the Republican National Convention and on behalf of Trump. And as an elected official in that nature, usually that's not something that, when I was an assistant prosecuting attorney, I was given very clear instructions to not campaign for judges in the county. It just, you keep the separation. You don't want any view of mistreatment, impropriety. There's just a level of separation that needs to occur. And especially when you have this on your desk, it's a very serious case because life was lost. And I want people to not just think about Miss Taylor. I want people to think about, what if the individual they were looking for was right, and was in this home, they had the right location. And I want people to think of, he was suspected of criminal activities. He still has rights to life, which the Constitution has stated is most important. I have a right to due process. I have a right to life, liberty. And so I think that when a person is killed by an officer, whether a suspect, because you are a suspect until a jury or a judge determines you guilty. You have been alleged to commit the crime. A person can also plead guilty as well. But guys get what I'm saying is, just because you officer, you prosecuting attorney say, I am accused of said crime, I have a right to the court system, due process, confront witnesses against me, review the evidence to see the actual truth of the matter. And I just look at it as, hopefully there will be more information that comes out in the investigation by the federal government, because I don't know what was done in Kentucky with the Attorney General. I just do think it's a little interesting that an Attorney General will campaign with this type of thing on his desk.
And to one of those points that you made, Cecil, the thing that just, I guess, one of those aha moments, to the point that you just made, that we hear all the time, you're innocent until proven guilty. Like, if I never make it to court, by law, I was innocent. I died an innocent person, even if you were the one that committed the crime. By law, I was an innocent person if I never had a court date where I was convicted, right? Yeah, so that's yeah. Yes. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
No,
I'm so sorry, brother. It's an allegation. When I signed a warrant, it was an allegation. There has been plenty of times that I believed, something, or I had a warrant, reading from the warrant, looks like a valid warrant. But as I'm talking to the witnesses, the victims, sometimes getting body camera or in-car camera, I found out that something was completely different. It is, people are people. There are good cops. There are bad cops. The majority of police, good. But there are some bad apples, just like there's good prosecuting attorneys and bad prosecuting attorneys. Every industry has good and bad. And the system is built so that there are checks and balances. There's a prosecuting attorney that looks at the information that the police bring. There's a judge that looks at the information that the police bring. There is a jury of your peer that looks at the information that the police bring. If you go into my house at midnight, even if I'm suspected of said allegation and I fire rounds at a police officer, if this person was killed, we would never heard about this case. It would never be brought to the forefront if the person they were looking for was in that house. It would just be on the news, suspected drug dealer, shoots at police with murder on scene. And everybody would say, oh, okay, I guess that's the end of it. And it's like, wait, no. he was suspected of drugs. They're not supposed to execute him on site. That is called cruel and unusual punishment.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's honestly, this is an interesting way that I think as Americans have come to view things, is that piece becomes so important. Was he guilty? You know, I don't completely agree like with the like from a legal standpoint. I understand people technically they need to go through the system and whatnot. Like I think like if you did it, like you did it, if people know you did it, you did it. Like my thing still is like the due process. You know what I'm saying? The due process isn't at the end of the gun. The due process is in a courtroom. And so anytime like what we're doing now is like a certain portion of people are saying, oh, they were guilty, they deserved it. You know what I'm saying? Versus like they deserved to go to court. That's what they deserve. They deserve to see the due process going out, not be killed at the end of at the end of a barrel because of that. So I think that's and I think like that's what we as Americans have decided is the process for all of us. White collar, blue collar, white, black, whatever, brown, it doesn't matter. Like that's what we've decided is the process. But there's a bunch of people out there that feel like if you're dead, it's okay as long as you were a drug dealer, as long as you were a rapist, as long, you know what I'm saying, whatever the case may be. And I don't want to, belittle anyone, especially if I'm going to throw rape in there. I don't want to belittle like the trauma on the other side of that, But what I am saying is like, if you rob a bank, if you steal like a candy bar, whatever the case may be, there's a due process. And so I think we need to get, and that's part of this. When you talked about like, sometimes it's not just the system, but it's like, even with the system we have, it could operate better if people just did what they were supposed to. I think this is a great case. Like if we as Americans got back to the places like, how is the system supposed to work? Let's try to get there. And as well as like seeking to repair places that are broken in the system, I think we'd be at a better place. Let's hold people to the standard that we said that we're going to adhere to. So, man, I know we got to wrap up. Dewan, what are your final thoughts? And Cecil, man, thank you so much for being on here. This has been great. It's been a wealth of information. I appreciate you.
Thank you, fellas.
Thank you. Yeah. So
I appreciate it too.
My final thoughts is just like, I just want to see us be better, right? It's like, I want to see us be better. I want to stop having to talk about the Breonna Taylors, and especially from the standpoint of, there not being any justice following behind it. And I want to see like a consistent, united voice against things that are just obviously messed up and wrong. And that's the part that really troubles me, because this is the people that hold and bite their tongue on things that are wrong, but speak out very freely about things that they're passionate about. Those are the people that drive the bus. Right. And it's like, if we're not driving the bus in the right direction and we're not concerned about all the passengers, then, how can you ever like agree and call this country great? Because that's been the problem from day one. Right. It's like, it's not great for everybody. And I think that there's some of us that wouldn't necessarily say it's been a great experience, that are working to try to make it great, right? By making it equal and great for everybody, that would love to stand in a unified voice with you, so we can push for that greatness and figure out and get a taste of what that experience has been like for you. So that's my final thought on the whole subject matter. You got anything to share before Ralph takes us home?
I would say I think we need to get back to a balance, and we do that with the polls, be an educated voter, hold these individuals accountable, ask for the information, FOIA these departments, get these police reports, and let's get back to a balance where my concern is everybody versus racism, and we need to if it's not affecting your community, still be involved.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Agreed. Couldn't have said it better. And guess what, y'all? We're gonna be back next Sunday at 9 o'clock. And I'm betting as somebody that do not gamble, I'm still willing to bet that we're gonna have something to talk about. And Ralph's gonna tell you why.
This is America.
I have a dream.
These are animals.
America preaches integration and practices segregation.
Why did you say Mexico? A rising tide of discontent.
The South will rise again. I have a dream.
We have contrasting visions about what America is.
This is America.